So I think in the interest of time, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order and get started. Welcome, everybody. I'm hoping we can expedite things in this meeting as much as we can. I'm not saying we need to cut any corners. We should spend every minute that we need to hit all these important items, but maybe not extra minutes if they're not warranted, just because our last meeting was almost 3 hours long, and some of us were in a 3.5 hour meeting last night. So it might be nice to try to expedite as best we can. Couple things. Just one is organizational. We're going to move a couple things on the agenda up towards the top. We had a request from the superintendent. There's time crunch later where she can't be in two places at once, and so we're going to be moving up the 2024 budget update and the transportation contract up towards the top of the meeting. And I don't know if we have everybody we need for those items, so I think we'll go ahead and jump into action items until we have the people we need to cover those. So if somebody could just remind me when we have the critical mass for the budget update and the transportation contract. So we'll go ahead and move into the action items. And the first one, is there any comments or questions related to the for information only items? All right. Dr. White, I'm hearing from Dr. Yarborough that he is in the waiting room ready to be moved over.
He's in the room.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We just were comments or questions related to the information only items. All right. Hearing none, let's hear about this, the abstract for Educators Rising. Ms. Natalino.
Good afternoon, everyone. The Educators Rising mini grant was applied for this summer. The State Department has given us $5,000 to expand the educators pathway over at Wilbercross High School. The majority of the funding will be used for the students to be engaged in experiences, conferences, and supplies to support the pathway, and also for professional learning for the teachers. So that is a grant that we received.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none, I had none either, so we'll go ahead and jump into the agreements. The first one is an agreement with Smart Start Education. Ms. Joyner?
Hello, everyone. Smart Start is the tutoring company that we actually just last week received notification that everything has been approved for the high dosage tutoring grant. So I'll be submitting the abstract for that. And this Smart Start is to be funded through that, it's part of the high dosage tutoring. It's the company that was that was presented at the very beginning. That's who I worked through in order to get the grant. So that is, everything was slowed down at the state. Things were pushed back. We were supposed to get approval a couple of months ago, but everything was pushed back. So they were not able to start until after we finally got this approval and were able to put this through.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions related to this? I had none other than the comment that it would be great if every vendor we work with would help us go get the money to then be able to fund our work with them. I think that's a great model, the rare times that it happens. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you.
All right, hearing and seeing nothing else on this, we'll move on to number 2, which is an agreement with Curriculum Associates LLC. Is Ms. Jorge here? Or somebody to speak on this?
Good afternoon. This is an agreement to be able to get additional professional development for teachers through the SIG grant. Roberto Clemente Leadership Academy was awarded the School Improvement Grant And this is something that is part of the original application that was approved by the state in order to provide teachers additional support in terms of planning instruction, delivering instruction. So it's an additional service directly for the teachers for the benefit of students using the iReady that the district is currently using for math.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions related to this? Seeing none, I do just one comment. I note that iReady, I believe, has a sole source letter. And so it'd be good if we could have the sole source letter appended to this and maybe mark it as sole source, just because I was looking back through other records and there's an April 5th, 2023 letter from the purchasing department designating iReady as a sole source. So just to always remind folks that, you know, why we're selecting some vendors.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. Okay, hearing and seeing nothing else on this one, we'll move on to number 3, which is a non-financial agreement with Dalkia Solutions. Mr. Finelli.
Good evening, everybody. This agreement is to upgrade the cogens at Conti, Cross, Hillhouse, Martinez, and Career. The cogens are the units that convert energy to heat the pools. Currently, we have cogens in all these locations. Currently, there's 1 pool online. Late spring, we will have 3 pools running online, and then come fall, we will have 4 pools online. So it is essential at this point to upgrade the cogens to ensure that we are working efficiently, being that the ones that we currently have are at end of life and failing. I do have on the call Hannah Pace and Kyle Crow from Delicia. They're here. They're going to speak more about the function and the savings behind the cogens. So I'm going to allow them now to go ahead.
Everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, and now you can see my screen.
Yes.
And see the
Yes.
PowerPoint. Okay, great. Okay, so appreciate everyone's time today. My name is Hannah Pease. I am a business development manager for Dalkia Aegis, formerly Aegis Energy Services. Also here today with me is Kyle Crow, Vice President of Sales and Business Development, to help answer any questions that we may receive from you guys. I have 7 slides that we're going to go through quick of what cogeneration is, as well as the efficiency, how cogeneration reduces greenhouse gas emissions, our history with New Haven Public Schools, the scope of work, timeline, economics, and of course the benefits. So cogeneration, first and foremost, also known as combined heat and power, or CHP, is a machine that takes in one input, typically natural gas, and in your case, in all the schools, it's natural gas, and it produces 2 forms of energy, which are electricity that you don't need to buy from the grid, and hot water. So for your schools in particular, this hot water is especially important for the 5 schools that Frank had mentioned with pools. And I understand that they are being redone at this time. So this is the perfect time to do what we're doing in order for the new pools to be heated. Here's just a quick slide on what the inside of a CHP machine looks like with the top off. They're all blue, located in your boiler rooms. Maybe some of you have seen them, maybe most of you haven't. But the engine that you see in the middle here drives a generator, which then produces electricity. And then all of the heat that is recovered off the engine is used to make hot water. But the most important thing about this slide, so this slide is going to show you how CHP is more efficient than a traditional power plant that we would normally get electricity from. So any traditional power plant across the US, it's going to take in 100 units of fuel in order to produce 30 units of electricity, where 70 units of fuel are just wasted up a smokestack and just or ran into a river. With CHP, that works the same in being that 30 units of electricity are being delivered to your schools. But the upside with CHP is that around 55 units of heat are being recovered from the unit, making it in the range of 85% efficient. So it's much more efficient than a typical power plant. This is also where greenhouse gas emissions become a factor here. So instead of that 70 units of heat being rejected into the air, the streams, CHP is capturing around 55 extra units to use for hot water on top of the 30 units of electricity. So CHP is significantly reducing CO2 emissions. And then, so here's just a summary with New Haven Public Schools. So we've been working with you all since 2008, where we won a bid to install 6 units at Career, Conte, Hill House, Martinez, Sound, and Wilbur Cross under our shared savings program. And our shared savings program is basically a PPA where we're almost like a mini power plant in each school. And New Haven Schools is purchasing the electricity from us at a reduced rate. So I'll go into the benefits and economics for you in a few slides later. But currently, your annual savings are around $58,000. So the units have saved New Haven Public Schools around $870,000 since they were installed 16 years ago. With these units being 16 years old now, they are reaching end of life, and the existing shared savings contract will be expiring within a few months. So this is now the right time to replace these units and extend the shared savings contract by another 15 years. Just a quick scope of work. So we'll design, manufacture, turnkey install all of the new systems, provide and install new controls, load modules, radiators. We'll do all the engineering, project management, pulling the permits, removing all of the old equipment. We'll handle the interconnection, permitting, and then we will be responsible for the maintenance costs associated with the CHP because we own and maintain those machines under the shared savings agreement. You will have the option to purchase them at the year 6 at a depreciated value. And then timeline we're looking at, we'd like to have all the machines replaced by the end of 2024. We've already ordered the machines and we're expecting them to come in by the second quarter of the year. So we'll start the engineering drawings and all the preliminary interconnection paperwork. We'll do one school at a time. So demo, installing the new equipment, which we expect one school to take a month around turnaround time. Existing equipment will stay online as we replace each machine, but these are complicated pieces of equipment. So there will be an order into what machines will be replaced first.
And just as a side note, we are going to push to have the 4 schools that will be online come, by the end of the fall to
Yes.
hopefully have new coaches in place.
Absolutely. Okay, so here are the economics benefits to extending the existing shared savings agreement and replacing the unit. So first and foremost, there was no cost when these units were installed 16 years ago under the shared savings agreement, and there's 0 cost today to extending the agreement and replacing all the units. You're basically just starting fresh with new equipment at a lower rate. New Haven schools will receive electricity produced by the CHP systems at a 44.5% discount for the first year. So your starting rate is 11 cents per kilowatt. So instead of paying this 0.1983 cents per kilowatt to a utility company, you will be receiving, or you'll be paying us 11 cents per kilowatt. Another benefit is that there are reduced costs with replacing these units because there's existing equipment that we can use when replacing the units, which improves the overall economics of the project. So because of higher electricity rates over time, existing infrastructure that can be utilized, and then basically starting from scratch again, replacing the units is going to increase your annual savings by $30,000. So your new annual net savings will be over $86,000 with a total lifetime savings being over $1.7 million over the next 15 years. Lastly, this is ensuring 15 more years of clean, green power for the school system. So this will be totally 30 total years of CHP. I don't think there's a lot of public school systems in the country that can say that all. So kudos to you all. And then just to recap again, the benefits. So under the shared savings program where we own, maintain, monitor the machines, New Haven schools will receive over $86,000 of annual savings, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, heating resilience for the pools, and then there's no capital cost or maintenance cost for replacing the CHP units. So, it's been a successful program over the last 16 years. The modernization of the machines will save you more money, and we're excited to extend this for another 15 years. Thank you. Any questions?
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, trying to formulate my questions. Thank you for bringing this forward. I appreciate your walkthrough and presentation of what has been and what the benefits have been, who owns what the length of the contract is, what the potential savings are. So thank you for walking through that.
Welcome.
I guess two questions. One is, so this is my question is whether or not we are deciding, we're asking the full board to decide to extend the contract for 15 years, or whether we are agreeing to the install of the equipment. I'm just looking at the effective dates for the agreement and trying to understand what step we're being asked to take today.
So this is,
Was it all
I
together?
guess you could say this is a new agreement, but really it is just extending this agreement that we've had for you. We're just in turn replacing all of the units and starting from a new rate and then moving forward there.
Yeah, effectively, the equipment needs to be replaced because it's at end of life, and we can't replace it unless we're amortizing it over a new 15-year period. So same agreement, same structure, but we're asking the school board to commit to a new agreement so we can justify modernizing the plants.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does that answer? Is that what you were looking for?
It does answer my question. Yes. Thank you. I guess my other question is, do you have any, so I'm thinking just from an education standpoint, do you monitor is there any educational component that you can give back to the district for educational purposes in terms of the natural gas that's coming in, what we are saving in terms of energy costs versus the rate if we were to not use this combined system, and what it costs to heat the pool and all of that? Are you monitoring that on your end, and are those data shareable?
We do monitor. We do. It is shareable. I'll actually show you. I think this is something that maybe.
Well, I think that's less. Can you go back up to 9, Hannah?
Yep.
So every site we're live with the units, getting real-time feedback from them, and that's more about operation and maintenance than it is about data collection. That's how we tell if their engines. Everyone here probably has had a car that's run hundreds of thousands of miles and a car that's had a problem at 30,000 miles. So we need to see what they're doing live. So we only recoup our investment if they're running and making power that you folks are buying from us. So we're tied at the hip and we need to see what they're doing, but we are tracking that data in real time. Our objective here, I believe at one school, and Hannah, you have to remind me which it is. There was a case study 16 years ago done of this project. We'd like to do another one. And that's where we're gonna pull data from those machines to build out yeah. But I mean, if you're looking for additional data on the front end at this stage, we have that. It's just the way that we format it to present it to you all in a way that answers questions and doesn't create more questions than it answers. So if you tell us you want information, just let us know which type and we can put it together.
Great, thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up, Dr. Yarborough. We do have a lot of students that are very interested in climate related issues. And so something like this, which is kind of an interesting process, things that have been in place in the schools and now they're being replaced, and kind of the economic plus the benefit of not having a wasted energy in this, but using essentially that wasted energy to heat the pools that they're swimming in. I think that might be of interest to some.
So I think something would, Hannah and I do these all the time, but we do presentations to, you know, mechanical, electrical engineers and energy conservation groups and things of that nature. We'd be happy to come do one of these for we do it in a cafeteria or do it wherever you have the space, but we've got something pretty queued up to do. It would be easy to do, a bigger audience than we're used to, but pretty cool to deliver to the students that are interested. Happy to do it.
Yeah, it might be something that either the building principals for these particular buildings or our science curriculum supervisor might be, you know, it's a real thing that's happening in some of our schools that we often suggest this, but it's, you know, the difficulty is the facilities folks are busy running facilities and the academic folks don't always know what's happening in these schools like that, but there is that kind of practical educational possibilities there, but helping us connect the dots might be useful.
Yeah, are any of these schools technical schools, or are there technical programs or anything at any of these?
I think the two of the high schools have technical related programs, manufacturing programs and trade programs.
Okay.
So there is definitely I think there's two high schools. I don't recall for the elementary schools what types of programs that they have in place.
Yeah, they're
But that
really
might be
cool.
low-hanging fruit is the
Really
two.
cool systems to show off in really bad areas to do field trips. So they're generally too loud to talk to people and walk, and not necessarily safe to walk people through, but we could figure, you know, we could massage that into a way that's safer for everybody. And our company is Hannah and I probably should have started this presentation with a safety talk, because we're supposed to do that every single time we meet with somebody. But I think our leadership team would die if we said we were going to walk 30 students through a boiler room. But presentations in auditoriums are fine.
Understood. The second thing is just a purely practical one. This presentation, if we're going to need to post it with the meeting materials for this item, just so that it answers the questions that I had written down. So that'll need to happen. So if this could be provided to the district so that they could have that posted, I request that happen sooner than later, just simply because I know we're going to have some folks on the board that are interested in more details. And this seems to provide a lot of those details. So
Yeah, we'll send this right back over to Frank after this.
thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on this item? All right. Well, thank you. This seems to be something that's been working, and it reminds me of a recent solar project we approved where it's stuff that's not costing us but bringing some benefits in, and the reduced energy cost is good.
That's great. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Take care.
Ann and Kyle, thank you very much for your time.
You got it. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Take care.
All right. So just looking at the time here, do you folks want to jump to the budget presentation, or do we keep going on these, Dr. Negron? I'm happy to continue to knock these out until people are ready.
I think we should try to knock out as many of these as we can and then jump
Okay.
into the presentations.
All right. Well, one thing that's going to help is agreements 4 through 9 are very similar and appear to be involving cost of living increases for school readiness programs. So Ms. Diaz-Valencia, if we could handle agreements 4 through 9 as a block, and then point out if there's any differences between them. But if we ask questions, we could ask about individual ones, but also deal with it as a block.
Sure. So again, 4 through 9, COLA agreements, as you all know, the primary funding source for all of our private sites that are non-New Haven public schools is the School Readiness Priority Fund grant, as well as the CDC grant. Throughout the year, other funding streams come down the pike. COLA enrollment came down in October, and the bulk of these agreements here were not signed by the providers. Sometimes the timelines work because we're back and forth knowing that they're out there in the city and not housed internally. So there's sometimes some time constraints. So again, these 4 through 9 are the remaining of the COLA agreements needed to couple against the School Readiness Priority Grant.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions? My comment is, I think, related, and this might be more for Ms. DeMayo. When I first looked at these, I was a little confused just the way that they were worded. They looked to me like these were new agreements, but then the numbers seemed very low for that. And then realizing, wait, that this is the School Readiness COLA program. So this is probably related to some cost of living increases, et cetera. So I don't think that these are amendments to those agreements, but just something that says, because when I look at these, so for instance, just number 7, which is one that I just happened to look up of the bunch, it says it's an agreement with Montessori on Edgewood to provide the 31 full year school readiness spaces. We approved that, I think, in June 2023 for this year. The big thing, this is just the smaller COLA being applied on top. Am I correct in that? So,
Yes.
so this is an adjustment to that. So just something that says that this is, because these are not essentially not, if I'm reading this correctly, these are not agreements to provide the 31 full year school readiness spaces. Some of these agreements are already in place. Are they? And then this is just to add to that, right? Or am I incorrect?
I would defer to Vanessa because
Sure. So again, they're almost in tandem too. The priority agreement is the agreement for the number of seats and the number of spaces. At the time after that grant award letter is received, there's also a COLA allocation based on those seats and those numbers that then is provided to each of the sites in addition to. So yes, in a way you are correct. However, the guidance and ask was to create separate agreements for all of those COLA funds that came down, which has been the same ask regarding the enrollment funding that came down in October. And then aside from that, some of the other agreements or amendments, amendments that have come through are based on the seat allocation changes from the New Haven Early Childhood Council. So I would love to say we're done. I don't know, unfortunately, we're never done when it comes to this piece. Outside of those major school readiness priority funds that come down to us in August.
And so my suggestion is just one of labeling that instead of these being, for instance, agreement with Montessori on Edgewood to provide the 31 full days, it's an agreement with Montessori on Edgewood to provide the COLA increase for their school readiness spaces.
Yes, noted.
Just to make it clear, it took me a minute and then I realized, oh, wait a minute, the funding source is the COLA program. And then it kind of made sense because the numbers then seemed low because that small percentage of what the actual full agreement is. So that's my suggestion. If somebody has better wording, please get it to Ms. DeMayo, but I would just say that it's, like an agreement to provide the COLA increase or the state allocated COLA increase or something like that.
Thank you.
I can add the language into the listing for the board.
Yeah, so just for each of these items. All right, are there any other comments or questions related to items 4 through 9? Agreements 4 through 9. All right, thank you very much. We will go ahead and move to number 10, an agreement with BRD Builders LLC. Mr. Finelli.
Yeah, this agreement is with BOD Builders. This is to perform a professional cost estimate. We are applying for a state grant to renovate portions of Hill House and Flack or the Field House. So one of the stipulations under this grant is to provide a cost estimator to get precise cost.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions? All right. You look like you had a question, Dr. Yarborough.
No, it's just the cost and no services, like no actual construction. It's a cost to tell us what the cost will be. So, but
Yeah. So the grant that we're applying for is 13 million. And there is a detailed amount of work that they have to do. And they are professionals. These are almost insane architects or engineers. So their cost is rather high for the hourly.
And so I guess perhaps an important point might be through this work, there's a possibility we are awarded this grant and it can cover the cost of this initial service.
Yes.
Okay. So we can get the cost back. Yeah.
Yes.
But if we're not awarded that grant, then
We still pay.
We're out. Yeah.
Dr. Negron, you had a comment?
No, yes, a comment, Dr. Yarborough. This is our way, right, of going after any way possible to bring in funding, right? But of course, there's an expense up front. But given where we stand, I think if we don't, right, then there's nothing to bring in. So that's the logic behind it.
Yes. And if we don't win this particular grant, we could perhaps still use the information to go after additional funding. Yeah.
Absolutely. We could use it for future bids, grants, or exactly additional funding. And now at least we'll have this cost estimate. And usually these numbers are good for about 6 months or so. So either way, we could generate something else out of it.
Thank you.
Mr. Lamb?
Just a quick additional comment. So with cost estimation, most of our state school construction grants are going to require this to be part of the submission. So as we start to utilize the school construction grant process more, these will come up more often because there's the requirement through the application process to provide this information. Just like what we did with the HVAC grant, we had to do the same thing for that. Not to this level of detail, but certainly the more money we ask for, the more money that this is going to cost. So if we're looking at doing a $100 million school, this kind of cost estimation may run into the hundreds of thousands. So just to put that in the back of your head as we start to move into these asks for additional grant dollars through different entities.
Thank you for that heads up. Yeah.
All right, thank you. My one question was just, do we have experience working with this vendor or the city? Do they have experience or other, just questions about the selection?
So this vendor actually has worked with the city before. They've worked a lot with the housing authority. This vendor is, very in line with school construction and facilities related to athletics. They do a lot of work at Wesleyan. They just remodeled portions of UConn. They built a new rink at UConn. So they're very familiar with this line of work. And we did go with them because of their relationship with New Haven and the housing authority.
All right, thank you very much. Seeing nothing else on this, Dr. Negron, you had.
Just wondering if this might be a good place to kind of pivot, since I think we finished, if I'm reading, this is the end of the agreements, right?
This is the end of the agreement, so it would be a good place to pause to jump down to the budget update and the transportation contract.
Yeah, I think if we could, please.
That sounds great. So we will pause in going through the action items and move on to the 2024-2025 budget update, followed by the transportation contract, and then we'll jump back and knock these out. So
might help if I take myself off of mute. Okay,
Yeah.
good evening, everyone. We're here again to propose the general fund 24-25 budget. And as we go through the budget presentation, you will see that we have included the district strategic plan, the objectives of our budget, our schools at a glance, our historical enrollment. We talk about our key trends and our how our schools are funded. We will talk to you about the initial projections and the proposed. We will also talk about the proposed 24-25 budget. We also are going to be showing you our 23-24 expenditure reports as well, because I think that has significance on what the budgets that we're asking for going forward. We'll talk about our notable cost drivers. We'll touch on the proposed new items which are in line with our strategic plan. And we'll also talk about the budget calendar, which we've made updates to because this is our second look at. And then I'll also add my final thoughts. So with that, if we can go to page 2, and in the forefront of whatever we work, we always start off with our strategic plan. This year, the district is currently updating the plan for 24 and going forward. And the continuation of our plan would be called Together Striving Towards the Next Chapter of Excellence. Next. Here we just have the table of context. I won't spend a lot of time going through that. Next. Oh, this is our objectives of the budget. So as you can see, we're always using priority area 0.5, which we're trying to do equitable resourcing to create and implement a transparent budget process that is equitable and site-based to support the instructional core and premised on the balanced budget. We're trying to allocate resources in a manner that promotes equity between magnet neighborhood schools. And we're presenting a budget tonight, which you will see is reflects the true cost of running the New Haven Public School District. Our direct resources, we try to push to the classroom for our learning environment. And we always invite our public participation in the budget development, which offers a greater level of transparency. This slide here basically shows that our diverse population. So you look at our enrollment currently as of October 1 is 19,267, and we have 41 schools. You can see we have 1 early learning center, 29 elementary schools, 9 high schools, and a transitional program, and 1 adult education center. At the bottom, you would see the percentages of the children that we serve, and that the fact that we speak 77 languages in our district. Next. This slide here is a presentation. If you look at, these are all of the schools, and it tells you what population are our ELs. And then it also tells you what type the school is, how many students, and then how many suburban students. At the bottom, you'll see where we have 3,900 students that are EL service. Now these are students, what we did was we just said it's 15, anybody 15% or more. That's how we came up. Any school that has 15% or more, that's how we came up with that number. Next slide. Here's our key trends of the enrollment. And as you can see, we had a spike in 2017. And then after that, you'll see the numbers start going down the other direction. We had a slight spike in 24, and that could be just the way we're counting the kids, or we actually did have a spike in the enrollment. Next slide. The key trends with New Haven, our key trends are the Alliance Grant and how the funds are being allocated now. So you can see across the board where we've been stagnant for just about as long as I can remember, going back to 16 and further. But in fiscal year 24, we received an additional, I'd say additional about $22,000. And then for next fiscal year, I think we're getting like another 3.9. But you see again, the increases in the ECS number. So you can see by state statutes, we highlight that since New Haven is an alliance district, any future change in ECS allocation must be made through the alliance grant. And the number that we at 25 is just it may be subject to slight change. Next. Okay. With this slide here is a very important slide because it tells a story. And what it's saying to you is we're down to, we went at 1 year, we were up at 96.7, and this was back in 2016. And then over in 21, 22, you can see that we went up almost to $200 million. What's happened is that now, with the ARP ESSER and all the ESSER grants sunsetting, we are now starting to do a decline, and you can see it's a sharp decline. And this decline will take place in September of this fiscal year, 2024. So you can see where our projected grant funds are going down to $97.6 million. And this includes, again, all the ARP ESSERs and all of the, a lot of the grants that were put in due to COVID, and a few small grants that we wrote that were only for a short period of time. 10. On page 10 is another grant slide, which I try to show you the various types of grants that we received. So we're showing the 22-23 funding, and then we're seeing of that funding what was rolled over into 23-24, and of 23-24 we received a 78.9 million. And then so our total available funds was floating right now around 140. And what we did in the last column was the projected revenue. How we came up with those numbers, we just looked at some grants are 2 years, so we said that we know we have a 15% carryover limitation in most federal grants. So what we did, we looked at the numbers and said, okay, fine. Let's just say in looking at the numbers right now, let's just roll over 15% if it looks like we will have 15%, and then add that to the 24-25 revenue. As we don't have the 24-25 revenue, we just kind of estimated where we were in the past, looking at it again historically, and that's why these numbers are about where they are right at this moment in time. Keep in mind that this is just a projection and things are subject to change. Page 11 is blank. Oh, okay. Okay, so page 11 just shows us in a, some of us, of course, are visual, so we try to just show that in this pie chart, you can see where we still have a large influx of grant funds that cover our income. And here it is, the state and local back. The state and local, and then we have the state grants, we have the federal grants, and then we have private grants. So you can see where the blue is starting to go down. Now remember, while ESSER is federal for the ESSER grant is federal funds, when they get to the state, they're flow through. So that's why the ESSER would be in that 128.1 number. Next, page 12. And page 12 is where we begin the initial projection for the 24-25 budget. If you remember last year, we started off in the whole $3.8 million, and there's a story to tell there. And now for 23-24, we, right now, our budget, the way it should be, is coming in at 220,076, and that's with all contractor requirements and very little anything else. This is just all increases. So we're actually asking for an 18.27 increase. Oh, okay. And this is page 13. So Christine is going to lead you into this slide. because we work together with the numbers, but she actually knows what is in this number, and she's going to explain the percentage increase and how we got there. Christine?
Thank you so much, Linda. I appreciate that. And thank you everyone for giving us this opportunity. The first column is the approved budget that we're working on this year. Those are the actual numbers that you see each month that we're currently working on. The second column are the increases with the contractual requirements. And that is the staff percentage increases, salary increases, bus contract, and any tuition contracts that we knew about. We included the actual increases that we would need to just maintain what we have now. The last column represents the dollar amount that needs to be increased, just to give you the visual of what those costs actually are. It comes down to a request of $220,076,118 for an increase of $16,812,334, which is 8.27%. Then we're going to look at it as a pie chart again for the visual. This is the full request of $220,076,118, and the categories, as you can see: personnel, full-time 56.3%, part-time 2.1%. Transportation is almost 15%. I'm going to go back and forth a little so you can compare what we're working on this year with what we're asking for next year to see that it's not a huge jump. Well, she didn't put the...
It's there. Keep going. There it
Okay.
is.
So you can see the full-time personnel is 57% and part-time is 2%. Those are pretty equal. Plant operations at 7% and transportation at 13%. We'll go back up to look. Plant operations is actually reduced by 0.5% and transportation is increased. Our cost of transportation percentage-wise is more this year. So just to show you that we're pretty much on target with personnel, using the same percentage, about 59% is staff. But then some shifts in, significant shifts in operation of plant if we're just given these contractual increases.
And the next chart is our proposed, these are the proposed new items that were going into the budget. And Dr. Negrona, I don't know if you want to speak to that, in terms of the high quality teaching and.
Sure, Linda, thank you. As I shared during the last presentation, right, as we think about where are the needs for additional resources to continue to support our staff, right, we know that a lot of the investments were leveraged with the ESSER resources that allowed us to bring in all of the new, for example, curriculum materials, research aligned to the science of reading that supported in equipping all of our classrooms in K-5, right? And millions of dollars went into that. But I also know that we need to continue to support the work that is happening inside of our attempt to bring about high quality instruction. So that is why I'm honing in regards to this bucket of work. It's continuing that work and the resources that are needed to continue to do that, along with knowing that as we hone in on our tier instruction, we also have to think about the academic supports that have to come into play, such as whether that be our interventions, whether it be through the support that we bring about to our teachers when we leverage our coaching, for example, as well as continuing to bring about the social emotional supports that our students need, right? And for that, we have to bring in support staff. So here we're talking about, social workers, counselors. So those are some of the investments that I'm referring to when I'm speaking about this graphic here, talking about mental and health supports, but also the work that we want to continue to do around engaging our families and supporting our families so that they can become true partners in the work, and the communication that we bring forth to them. So that is here reflected in the family engagement. And something that I've been speaking about since my arrival to the district, that it isn't just about the work that we're doing K-12, but ensuring that we are building readiness for college and career when our kids leave. And that means, what do our pathways look like? The investments that we're leveraging. Today you heard Dina talk about, right, the $5,000 that we were able to bring in for the educator's pathway. But as we think about all of our pathways, how do we continue to strengthen that work? A lot of our doing enrollment, certification work, a lot has been done leveraging, again, ESSER and other opportunities. I don't want to be at the mercy of grants, because grants are not guaranteed. We need to at least afford a few dollars to be able to continue that work. And last but not least, that we have to invest in our environments, right? The supports that are needed to make sure that they're safe for our teachers, safe for our students. So some of these investments speak about trying to bring in, right, and ensure that we have our safety officers, but not only that, additional work that we need to continue to do. I know that money is tight. I'm being very conservative around the new ask, but again, these are some of the new ask that we're trying to build into the budget. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Linda.
Thank you, Dr. Negron. Some of our notable cost drivers for this year, of course, are just our 86% of general funds costs are in your personnel, your out-of-district tuition and transportation. All our staff are part of the collective bargaining unit, so we have to go with whatever raises that are implemented. So this just tells you 4 of our largest bargaining units, and the following contracts changes are in place for 24-25. So we've done so far the teachers, we've done the administrators, the paraprofessionals are in negotiation, and our management is part of the city union. So whatever numbers they come in with, that's what we have to provide. All other salary changes have been negotiated. We do have one contract, which is we're just starting to work on negotiations, and that is the substitute agreement. Our transportation contract renewal is from July 1. July 1 was anticipated to be an increase of 3%. Christine, is that still true? Okay, thank you. All right. So, yeah, next slide. 23-20. Back to the slide itself. Okay, so we're just showing you here our budget for 23-24, and we're showing you how the expenditures were made. And Christine went back and forth with the slides to show you the increases based on these slides for 24-25, and where we actually got the numbers from. Okay, 17, you can go. And 18, this here is just our monthly finance report. So it did show that we did have a deficit this fiscal year, which we are reducing. If you can remember, the last time this number was 5.8, we have gotten down to $4 million, and we're still working. A lot of work went into making these numbers, changing these numbers. People have had to make sacrifices and stuff, but we know that we must operate with a balanced budget, and we're doing everything that we can to make that happen. Okay. Our mitigation efforts thus far have been, we continue to use many of the mitigation strategies that we utilized last year so that we could eliminate any projected deficits. So we reprogrammed unspent funds wherever we could. We continue to review and hire, ensuring that the new hires coming in at appropriate salary based on experience and looking at individual building needs. We're continuing to monitor and request all new grant applications that allow indirect costs to be included in the application. Our indirect cost rate, I must mention, has gone down. And that's basically because of all of the federal money that is coming in. And you know, when you apply for the rate, you cannot use your federal money to get a rate. So we're going to see that. We've been blessed, but now we're going to start seeing that number go down as well. We continue to work on surveying comparable districts to see if what the tuition rates are across the board. And so that's still a work in progress. And then we continue to utilize our ARP ESSER to cover costs with the extension, which is the paras working as substitutes, the bus monitors, the extra cleaning, custodial and security overtime is still a big issue due to the fact that all the wonderful programs that we've instituted, they come at a cost because we have to keep our buildings open, which means we have to clean them later. Additionally, due to Saturday Academy, though, we were able to build these costs into the grant we're allowable. And that's where I talk about if we have a grant, we continue to see what types of things we can put in there, especially like on a Saturday Academy. The schools wouldn't be open for the exception of the Saturday Academy program. So we were able to say, because of this program, these additional costs occurred. 20. Mitigation efforts continue. We're still looking at the budget lines and how they're affecting our budget. We're keeping away from students, though, to make sure that the students get whatever they are entitled to. And we're exploring other sources of revenue, which is not so restrictive. We have frozen all general fund expenses, all non-personnel expenses at this time. It's March already, so most of the items that a school would have needed to operate have been received and entered. So we're done with accepting any additional purchase orders unless there is a true emergency. We're also looking at building uses and overtime costs. We're going to review the enrollment numbers and class sizes going forward. We're going to realign our summer learning programs inclusive of busing. We're also looking at non-classroom part-time positions. We're also looking at increasing enrollment at our interdistrict schools. It's down, but we're looking at filling those slots. And then we're also looking at, and I understand that has been done this year, a consolidation of our current bus routes, which have also helped us this year with the reduction of reducing our mitigation plan. The next slide is just basically our budget timelines and showing you what we completed thus far. Keep going, 21, and where we're going next. And you'll see the to be determined because we don't have an assigned date yet. So we're just putting, we're just putting to be determined. We are scheduled for the Board of Aldermen on April the 11th. So we should all mark our calendars for April the 11th. And then what we don't know, we still, with the grant funding, especially with respect to the Alliance grant by statute, all future increases in ECS must come through the Alliance grant. So like I think I mentioned earlier, the number we were looking at was 3.9 additional. But we need to make sure that, and I want to make that clear to the committee now, that additional funds, we have to make sure that like we're saying 3.9, there are staff already on the Alliance grant. So we have to include the new raises. So while we're saying we may get 3.9, that does not include the increase already. And then, the effect that of the declining enrollment will have on grants and costs due to unfunded mandates. We also will most likely have increased costs for healthcare and other benefits. And then the impact of inflation on goods and services, which we are seeing now as we go out to bid. What was one price that we're noticing that the prices are going up as well. And then increasing costs of special education services and outplacements. Next. Okay, and then my final thoughts. The award to New Haven with the ESSER 1, 2, and ARP ESSER have been extremely helpful as we design robust academic programs and other improvements to our students along with our buildings. However, ESSER was similar to Title I, and so we had the same restriction on not supplanting. So we had to make sure that we weren't supplanting services and expenses that should have been picked up with the general fund budget. With the $80 million award of ARP ESSER, they were a little bit more flexible, so we were able to do some additional great things that we would not have been able to do with just maybe, say, ESSER 2. So the problem now is that ARP ESSER funds will sunset on September the 30th, 2024. I went back too far. And then due to the increased costs mentioned earlier and the decrease in grant revenue, we will face a projection deficit. And I'm just saying 8 million. I'm not sure at this point because we're still working with numbers. But I just want to put that out there that we had $80 million for a period of number of years. Now what's happening is that because the general fund budget has not grown over time, we have not gotten the cost of living. There were no new programs in there. All of the stuff that we did, a lot of it came with our ESSER. So we need to be clear that there are a lot of things that while we hope they don't go away, we have to look at other ways to fund these programs. And I'm sure as we all know, when we submit our budgets, we never really get what we need. And at this point, the budget outlook, we need to really, there are going to be some major thought changes. So we will need to explore new sources of funding opportunities as well as continuing the challenges to close the gap. This may entail a reduction of services, programs, and operations. And I think I'm at the end here. Yes. Okay. And these are our children.
All right, thank you very much for that presentation. Dr. Negron, you had something else you wanted to add?
Mr. Wilcox, I know that you had also asked, and we are ready to present to you also an update related to the staffing guidelines. And because I wonder if you did not want to hear that also and then combine the conversation, only because some of those asks that I referenced in that image that speak about particularly around those supports are embedded in the way that Assistant Superintendent Keisha Red-Hannans has outlined sort of like the update related to the staffing guidelines. Again, I just wanted to put that out there in the event that you wanted to do that or take them separately.
Thank you for that. We might just need to take them separately because my understanding is you have until 6 p.m. and we also have the transportation contract as well, which is a huge item. And so, but that's good that there's background that is for part of the purpose of the staffing guidelines report is to see the gap between how many people we do need in the district and how many people we're funded to have in the district. And so when this is not much in the way of new programs budget, that means that we're not having enough social workers, librarians, math teachers, English language learning teachers, et cetera, that the students deserve in the district. So that's kind of a piece that kind of backs up that we're not even asking for what the true need is. So I think we'll have to hold off on that and let's just see, are there any comments or questions related to the budget presentation? Dr. Yarborough.
Yes, thank you very much for the budget presentation. One, for assembling the budget, but also doing the work of understanding where our district has been and where it's going financially and where our needs are. I have a clarifying question and maybe a request depending on the answer. The new items that are proposed that Dr. Negron walked us through, I think I read at the top of the slide that those new items are not included in the budget request coming up.
They are.
They are included?
Yes.
Okay, so they are included. They are there.
Yes, Christine, I'm going to verify with Christine, but we did some work this afternoon. So we may have missed the changing of a number, but those requests are included in that 16, correct?
They are
Chris-
included with some restructuring. We were able to put them in that, for that new request.
Okay,
So the number did not change, but the items are included.
okay,
So
good.
Dr.
I was going to
Yarborough,
recommend we include them. Yes.
yeah, I was gonna add, right, that we sort of like shifted them in and then look comprehensively, where can we trim still? Because without some of those items, again, I worry. We know that we have to tend to social emotional needs, right? We've done a lot on the academic side again, with the additional dollars, federal dollars that came in, but we know there's still a great need. There's still a great need. So that was one strategy as we continue to mitigate, right, where we are.
Yeah. Thank you. I definitely think that's important as the district has made gains and we want to keep those gains and build on them further. And reflecting that in our budget is important. So I'm in favor of that. So there might have been a slide that said those new things were not included, or it might have said they are included, but maybe just double check the text there.
Yes.
But I hear you that the number has been included. So thank you very much.
Right. And I want to take this opportunity too to thank Christine. She's been a godsend in terms of, I keep asking her to look up this number, pull this number, then I would make her to go, well, did you put this in? We'll go back and do this and stuff. So after doing 24 pages for the last week, things can happen, and I'm not very popular down here right now. But
Yes, you are.
but we got it done. And I also want to thank the assistant supers who we reached out to ask them where can we make some adjustments, and they were very welcoming, and they did work on with us to say, well, we can do this and move this over here. So I just want to thank, I worked with a great team, and I just want to make sure that they are recognized and I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. So.
Thank you, Linda.
Anything else, Dr. Yarborough?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. I did also catch that same comment that's on one of the slides. It says there wasn't any new spending proposed in that. One overall comment is I do think that, just maybe looking at the meeting recording that this is posted to review, there was a couple times I just kind of made, a note here or there that where things like something is subject to change, or just something that there might need to be an annotation on the slides so that the slides kind of stand alone. They might get, other people that might not have the benefit of listening to the whole presentation and just look at the slides. So some of those comments where they were, like I think on slide 8, like, this is subject to change, maybe just annotating the slide that something is subject to change. I also think a minor thing is on slide 5 where you were kind of showing us, the student population. There are some other categories of students that it might be really interesting to, everybody in the district that might know about this. For one, we hear periodically about the increased number of homeless students and housing insecure students that we have in the district, which is, I think, approaching 1%, or maybe not 1%, but it's more than 0.5% of students. I'm trying to remember the right number. Maybe it's several percent. But that's like another thing, special education students, just something that's really driving home that, our students are reduced students that qualify for reduced lunches, et cetera, those kinds of things that help just tell the story of an urban district like this. There might be some other things that you could add to that. Finally, just the two major things here that I don't know is told strongly enough in this. It's just kind of implied, and that is that there is a difference between the amount of need and the amount of allocation, just in terms of the mayor's proposed budget.
Right.
It's like there's an almost $12 million difference between those numbers. And as was pointed out, we rarely get what the mayor proposes. And so there's a disconnect there. And then the other thing is the proposed changes on the state side that the governor has been proposing in terms of changes to the ECS funding to try to take some money from that funding in the ECS formula, which would be added money into the Alliance grant, and then moving it in for early childhood programs and having some sort of sense of we have early childhood programs. Maybe it's a wash, but maybe it's going to be a couple $1 million difference. And then finally, I was just reading with interest a story on NBC Connecticut, and from the Hartford Public Schools superintendent had an op-ed in the Current this week, I think yesterday, just talking about the changes that they're proposing, the governor's now proposing in magnet school tuition funding that Hartford estimates could cost $11 million. And so I'm wondering what the New Haven number is, because those are things that are going to be decided in this session, perhaps quite negatively. And so really underscoring that.
Mhm.
And the final thing that I'll just say, and I know we have other things we need to talk about, is just, you know, you imply and hint at there, if the funding is greatly reduced from the need, and this is particularly if it's exacerbated by changes at the state, there's going to be a giant budget hole that our mitigation efforts might not hold. And so, you know, that was like noted in things like there's going to be need to be some major thought changes, I think was one quote. It's going to be some major thought changes with some greatly reduced dollars attached to things, which might be some pretty severe cuts in the district. And so at some point, people need to have a real clear picture of, there's a clear picture of what the ask is. You need a clear picture of this is where we're at, mostly because one of the richest states in the country doesn't equitably fund its schools as well as it could and should with the wealth in the state. So we end up with New Haven students that aren't getting what they need, which we'll hear more about in our staffing guidelines report, compared to students in the wealthier districts where the towns have a ton more money and are able to fund the things that the city of New Haven just has limits as to what can be done, even with some increases in pilot program funding. So those are just some overall thoughts there. You might want to just think about as I'm assuming this is going to be presented to the board next week. So I just would think about maybe some of those things as you adding to the presentation or being able to answer once we get to that level. Dr. Negron?
I think you covered it, Mr. Wilcox.
Okay. So that said, it's a tremendous amount of work goes into this, and also mitigating the efforts this year, and then thinking about how to mitigate next year's issues too. So thank you so much, Ms. Hannons, Ms. Bourne, and your teams that put all this together.
Thank you.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else on this, we should probably jump into the transportation contract.
We are happy to do so. So what I wanted to share is that I am hoping that today that I can get hopefully the Finance and Operation Committee to agree to move this forward for board approval. And my request for that is because I've been taking a close look at the timeline, as I shared with you at the last FNO, because once it goes to Board of Ed and hopefully it does get approved, there's still other phases that it has to go through, right, with the Board of Alders. And I've been very cognizant from the very beginning to ensure that we are in a good place, right, as it relates to all the planning, as to ensure that there are no disruptions to the servicing that we need in terms of summer learning, and then of course later the fall. So with that, I know that I want to say thank you for the additional questions that we received early this morning. Immediately we sent that out so that the team could do a little bit of work. And we do have Chief Lamb ready to address some of those questions that we got this morning. And also we invited Teddy Vera, who I see there behind Chief Lamb, right? Teddy has been like living and breathing. Right, she's the one that works very intimately with our vendor, that it's our only person who submitted a bid. So I wanted her to be here today to also be able to chime in and be able to answer questions. But with that, I know that Chief Lamb has put together a detailed memo that I do believe answers some of the questions received. But if it doesn't, I'm saying that this is a draft. So this will be the opportunity, right, to continue to work on that. But I'm hoping that then out of this conversation today, that there could be approval to move it to the full board. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Lam.
Thank you very much, Dr. Negron. So I'm going to share my screen, and as Dr. Negron stated, I have developed in collaboration with Teddy and with others and Dr. Negron, this document, which is in draft form. We're hoping that this addresses all of your concerns and questions. Certainly, if there are items that need to be further addressed, we'll take care of that, and those will be posted prior to the board meeting at next week. So what you see on your screen is the beginning of the memo, and I'm just gonna quickly run through it. So NHPS will be ending its one-year contract extension with First Student on June 30th of 2024. A request for proposal has been drafted and coordinated through NHPS Transportation, City of New Haven Purchasing Department, Corporation Counsel, Mike Gormany, NHPS Finance Department, and others. The RFP was closed on February 6th. A single response to this RFP has been received and was reviewed with City Purchasing, Director of Transportation, Teddy Barra, and myself, to ensure that all areas of the RFP have been met. Further evaluation of the proposal was not required because it was a single submission. Contract costs for this contract are based on 180 days of service with pricing provided per vehicle type per day. The total annual cost for each contract is based on the number of routes that are in place at the beginning of each year. With enrollment changing, where students live and what schools they will be attending, dictating that the number of routes that are generated. Currently, the district has 313 routes. We did start the year with a slightly higher number. So this has, as we become more efficient and operations become more stabilized, that number decreases. Operating routes serve each day across the district. This is the existing contract, our existing contract number. The number is only an approximation of routes throughout the year. The RFP for services began July 1st, 2024 for services, where we started conversations with those that were involved in the previous RFP process to determine what steps needed to be taken to improve upon the previous RFP. It was posted December 26th and closed on February 6th. The RFP services began July 21st, having an opening on March 6th. So this is the intent of an additional 2 months was to give respondents additional time for planning, and then allowing the district also to move through this process with the Board of Education as well as the Board of Alders earlier in the year, allowing the contractor to have additional time. The scope of work for the contract for the previous and current RFP were created in large part from the documents created by CESO Group. For those of you that were here last year during the RFP process, CESO Group was a transportation consulting firm that we used to draft the RFP. This RFP, some of the changes that you would see is one contract versus the two separate contracts that we currently have. We currently have one contract for regular ed transportation and one contract for special ed transportation. We did see through the last RFP that the number of respondents, we did get significant response, and in that we were able to determine that it was in our benefit to consolidate the contracts into one RFP, given some operational issues and some other items that we'll talk about in a little bit. In October of 2023, again, I conducted a review of the concerns that were raised. From these concerns and comments, there were several items that needed to be addressed in drafting the new contract documents. So working with purchasing and with Corporation Counsel, we were able to make those adjustments. We've also included Michael Gormany, Paul Wessel from the Greater New Haven Clean Cities, and Steve Winter to assist us with language around bus electrification. During the review of comments, a clear message was made from staff that splitting the contract into segments presented operational challenges at the school level, as well as challenges for parents and for of children who may be placed on different buses, requiring use of two different applications, two different types of applications being used can provide some confusion. We also added administrative difficulties for finance team in tracking and invoicing of payments for two or more contractors. There is significant challenges to this in our current process, and adding another vendor would just increase those difficulties. In order to expand on the bus electrification aspects of the RFP, a requirement was added for the contractor to provide a plan for electrification of the fleet by 2030 within 6 months of the execution of the contract. And this is something that I've had conversations with First Student about, and we're First Student being the largest provider of electrification services across the country is well suited to provide this plan for us. First Student has also applied for 25 electric buses through the EPA Clean Air Act funding, which we are still awaiting the award on. If that is announced and First Student is awarded those electric vehicles, we will work through the process to implement them into the district as soon as possible. Some of the changes another change that was made into the RFP was the purchase of fuel for transportation services under the new contract will be 100% provided by the City of New Haven. This allows us the ability to greater control over costs. In previous contracts, the First Student had a $500,000 was responsible for purchasing fuel in excess of $500,000 of district cost, which we ended up paying. So having First Student take on those costs really was not operationally efficient, as well as us having the ability to control those costs more effectively. Another benefit of this RFP was to align the contract with the requirement for bus electrification to 2030. Aligning this goal with the contract term, I think, gives us greater continuity of service. It also allows the bus company to be just as vested in success as we are, and having that plan in place within the first 6 months will help us to be able to plan out to 2030. And then additionally, we added 2 option years. So the contract initial term will take us for a 4-year period, and then there will be 2 additional option years that will be available to us to utilize. We have those costs as part of the RFP for those option years. And those option years allow us to be able to evaluate the service that we're getting from First Student, and if need be, put this back out to bid. Again, we want to maintain that continuity of service, but we also want to make sure that we're successful in our bus electrification at the 2030 goal. So by having these options, it allows us that flexibility to be able to ensure that we're staying on target, and if there are issues, be able to respond to them. So in collaboration with Michael Gormany, we've added language to allow city services to utilize our pricing structure. This allows for, we've had situations where the police department have utilized our buses and for certain events, and there have been other needs for the city to utilize First Student for items. So this was added in to allow for that. The new contract for services requires a replacement of approximately 120 of our buses to meet the bus age requirements set by the city, New Haven City Charter. Buses cannot be older than 7 years by city charter. So in the 1-year extension, that was waived by the Board of Aldermen, and we were able to move to have this contract approved, but the costs of providing for those additional 120 buses at approximately $95,000 is 11.4 million, and First Student has to absorb that into the cost of their contract. The evaluation of services to meet contract deliverables is an ongoing process for all vendors, and First Student is no different. We work with Corporation Counsel and the New Haven Purchasing Department to determine how to work with vendors to resolve particular issues as they arise. And in some cases, that can include termination of the contract. With First Student has liquidated damages in their past contracts. Those contracts, the language was not weak enough. It was not strong enough for us to be able to respond with liquidated damages. That language has been evaluated and modified to be able to give us a little bit more strength with how we respond to liquidated damages. And First Student has been very willing to work with us collaboratively with district staff, myself, Teddy, to resolve issues as they arise. And we have not seen trends in issues. It's been more one issue here, one issue there that Teddy has been able to work with the team to resolve. getting into the actual costs of the RFP, current contract is 30,730,833. First year of this contract came in at 29,402. So out of the gate, we see that first student has really sharpened their pencil and trying to work with us to lower costs to the district. Just a quick note that previous RFP was based on 319 routes. This RFP was based on 317. So certainly the difference of that comes to about 184,000. So when we look at that, the difference in the routes, it's not significant. It's not an apples to apples comparison, but it is very close. And then one other item I put in here was the wage rates of the CDL drivers for the bus. This current collective bargaining agreement goes out to 2026 with significant rate increases. There used to be 5 steps. This was reduced to 3 steps 2 years ago, and has made a significant difference in driver retention with salary costs. So, and then timeline. So this is the slide, the last slide from the previous presentation on update, and it shows that where we are now. Obviously, there was a survey that was distributed out to all of the vendors that said they were going to provide responses but did not. And we are currently, so one thing I added into this at the end was just proposed next steps, where we are currently here, March 5th, but the recommendation to the Board of Education for next Monday. And then we have a March 21st deadline to submit for Board of Alders. And that takes us to the April 1st presentation to, excuse me, April 1st presentation to full board, and then April or May to committee for full board approval. And that's what I have so far. I don't know if Teddy, if you want to add anything.
No, if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
All right, first just want to jump in and see if Dr. Negron has any comments before she leaves this meeting.
Again, we've been very, I feel like we've been very thorough in this process from the very beginning. And as I explained at the last FNO, like we really leveraged the learnings from the last process. I do know that upon coming to this role, it was a lot that I heard of, and the wish to have a smoother process this time around. So I do feel like we've done due diligence in doing all of this work, and even leveraging others on the city side, just to make sure that we are doing everything like step by step. And again, it's unfortunately that we only have one bid, but even going back out, right, and sending out a survey to see, hey, you opened it up. We thought you were going to bid. Why didn't you bid? But even with that, only getting like one response, I do feel like we've done due diligence, and like this is what's in front of us. And again, I just want to urge you to really take the opportunity to ask additional questions while the team is here, but strongly urging you to bring this to our board for approval.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough.
Thank you. Thanks for everyone's work. Thank you also, Mr. Lamb, for the walkthrough, for preparing the memo, and just the district for the steps that have been taken in collaboration with others. I have a couple of questions. Well, first I want to say I do support that this committee moves this forward for board approval. Electrification. If there are federal dollars that come in for electrification of buses, for purchasing school buses, are the savings for that reflected in the contract as savings for our district? Or how is the expansion of our electric bus fleet a part of this plan in terms of price tag for each of those buses, please?
So that would be something that we would need to collaborate with First Student on when they produce their plan. Because we don't, if we were to be awarded, if First Student was to be awarded a grant, those dollars, so the dollars for replacing those vehicles we would need to look at which vehicles they're replacing. Are they at the age where they would need to be replaced within our fleet anyway? And if they are, the dollar impact would need to be discussed, because it's the determining factor is if it's awarded.
Right. And so
we don't know what that would look like until it happens.
So that's not in this contract.
That would be part of the plan that they create.
Right, but it's not contractual such that once we sign this contract, we agree to pay. And if they choose to pass on savings to us because they've received a grant, then they choose to. But if they don't choose to pass on savings for us, we still pay per bus for the replacement or for electrification.
I understand what you're saying. And I believe that would be something that we would need to work out during the contract process.
We would also have to evaluate the use of fuel. There could be a savings in fuel costs once they go to the electric buses.
Right. When we say the contract process, or that's something to be negotiated, is it separate from this contract? I guess that's what my question. I don't quite understand the process, so
I would have to ask our corporation counsel how that can be incorporated.
Okay.
But I do understand what you're asking, and I appreciate the question.
Okay. Thank you. My other question is, it's also around the electrification of the buses. So let's say we meet our goal for 2030 with First Student, and we also decide to agree to the 2 potential renewals. So we keep extending the contract. My understanding is that after that, we need to go out to bid again. Now, at that time, we've met the 2030 electrification goal for the percentage of our fleet. When we go out to contract, we don't own those buses. So whoever is a part of that, whatever company is a part of that new bid, will they need to come in
Yes.
with the 2030 goal already met?
Yes. And that would be everybody that's contracting for transportation services after 2030.
Right, but we don't have anything that we can contribute to
No.
that.
And there may be a vehicle within the plan that's developed for New Haven to begin to have ownership,
Okay.
so that we don't go through that process again. But that would need to be worked out. You know, we're not most districts in the state of Connecticut operate with under 75 buses. We're 300. So our challenge is our volume. And for us to look at 300 buses and say that we're gonna now have ownership of that is significant, especially when you look at them as electric buses. That investment needs to be thoroughly vetted. And that's kind of why I'm looking for a First Student Electrification Division as the leading entity in bus electrification to tell us what is the best way for us to do that. And work collaboratively to develop that plan to get us there. And we want to be able to put into that plan a benefit for the district, whether that be the district now takes on ownership of possible grant opportunities. Now we have the time and the ability to work with First Student to do that. The language within the contract supports them helping us to develop those plans and those pathways for us to achieve ownership, if it's possible.
And is that benefit around electrification and the infrastructure that will be needed and the job roles that will need to be fulfilled to operate this recharging of our fleet? Is that a part of this contract as what we can expect because of the 2030 goal, or part of like course A, course B, depending on what happens? Or is this something that will be an additional conversation and negotiation?
Additional conversation and negotiation.
Okay.
It will have to be.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that will all get flushed out with the development of the plan.
Okay. But the plan is not in this contract.
Yes, it is. They have to develop within the contract. It states that the First Student has to provide a plan within 6 months.
Okay, and we're going to have to go with it.
Yes. Well, we don't have to. It's a collaborative plan. It's not them coming to us saying this is what it's going to be and that's that. It's working with us to develop what does that pathway look like.
Right, but it's not in the contract that we're agreeing that this will be
we're
the
not
plan.
agreeing to
Not
the
at this
plan.
stage.
Developing what that plan looks like.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. 3 more questions. The quick one, liquidated damages, which you spoke about. I don't know what that means.
Teddy.
Yeah. Sorry, Tom's having a coughing fit over here. What that would be a weekly or a monthly meeting, depending on how we spell it out, and Corporation Counsel will help us with that. But it would be a formal complaint process, something that we can sit down and say, okay, we received this complaint, and the bus company and the transportation director can say resolved. Not resolved, we're fining you. And the fines are spelled out according to what they failed to do. If they failed to cover the run within 15 minutes, if they failed to have enough drivers to do every run. So it's all spelled out in the contract, and it'll be worked out, and it'll be more formal. It never was formal before, but Corporation Counsel advised us that we need to have a more formal plan in order to get the liquidated damages. And the way that works is the liquidated damage, let's say it's 1 week, it's $300 for different fines, that would come off the bill. So each month we would subtract any liquidated damages from the invoice.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And maybe my other it's just a comment or a request might be along the lines of what you said, which is that we actually just looking at my notes, that we provide the numbers, that we actually do an evaluation, that we keep an evaluation of this vendor, of this contractor, and that we show the data in terms of what's done successfully, what are some areas for improvement, and that we have that information that we're able to show in concrete numbers in terms of calls that come in, changes, or any challenges with routes, the number of successful routes, like the percentage maybe of a given school year of completion, so that I guess at least for me, it will help me to understand the strength that we have in our vendor. And it would also help me to understand what are anomalies and what is a regular practice.
Right.
And from the outside, like without working in the transportation office, I don't know what's an anomaly and what is actually a regular performance topic. And I understand we're going with this vendor because they've served our district for a long time, also have served our district well in many areas for a long time, and they are our vendor in front of us now. And my last thought is I'm curious just for future times that we do this. So in another 4 years or 4 plus 2 options, I'm curious about our decision to take what was 2 contracts for general transportation and special ed and make it 1 contract, and what the impact of that has been for us. I think there is a cost. I think there's a cost that we paid. I think there's a cost that we, as a district, anticipated in terms of the ease of having 2 different vendors run 2 different parts of our transportation. And I think that's a very valid and very real concern and forethought about what the impact of that might be. And I think what I heard is that there were a number of vendors who bid for us when there were 2 contracts there. And there were also other changes, such as a shorter timeline for this number of years of this contract. And also the electrification goal might have been different in those contracts. But I wonder about taking those 2 contracts that we initially had and making them into 1. What has been the impact of that in terms of people bidding? So I think the way that we've approached this particular process has cost us something. And we may not be able to name it or nail it down. But in the future, I hope that we just explore what some of the options might be. And if there is an additional opportunity to hear from the vendors, the transportation vendors who went to the site and investigated a little bit about us in this RFP, if we're able to hear anything from them, maybe a second attempt to ask, what made them not apply, it might be good learning for us. And it might be the case that the stronger vendor just took the opportunity and applied, and that's understood as well. So for the staff here, I just thank you very much, and for the city who also collaborated with us and the other partners who worked with us on this RFP process. Thank you for that. And Mr. Wilcox, that's all from me. And, I do support us. I do support us moving this forward to the full board for recommendation to approve.
All All right, thank you. We'll
Thank
do
you.
that.
Thank you.
We'll do that momentarily. I just wanted to, one or two quick comments. Thanks for pulling all this information together and for the memo. I think my suggestion would be to send the memo to the committee members, just in case they have any other quick questions or whatever, just to, as you said, it was in draft form and just to help if there's suggestions for as this rough draft moves, I mean, as this draft moves into the final draft before Friday. So if there's any comments or questions that we could get those in, and I do appreciate pulling that together. I think that greatly helped the presentation to have that, and it'll help our colleagues. One or two little things. I do think to go to Dr. Yarborough's point, that one of the things when something can't be spelled out completely in a contract, what can be put in there is the understanding of how something will be worked out, which is what I'm imagining the electrification part would be. And so I also think that it would be advantageous to the district to have some sort of language saying that, you know, the goal is that if there are cost savings that come from electrification, that those savings are shared between the vendor and the district, and it's not just cost savings that then the vendor can count as profit, but it's also maybe reducing our costs, and that there's some agreement that that's one of the processes that we're looking for. And I do think it's an important point. The 2030 requirement, if I remember correctly, that's not just us saying we got to do this by 2030. There's also state. It's the state, or is it the federal government that's having these goals? I think the state has like 2035 goals. I'm trying to remember the details. You're muted.
I believe that the 2030 goal is a federal goal.
Okay.
But there has been, from what I understand, conversations around the inability of manufacturers to produce the amount needed to meet the goal. So that may get pushed, but that's just in early stages of conversation right now.
Okay, so the point being is that because this isn't just us saying that the federal government's saying that, and they're the ones through the EPA that have been doing significant amount of funding in this area. So there is, if the country is going to be achieving that, it's going to be large investments by the federal government, which means all the more reason that in those plans that there's some sort of agreement for sharing the benefit of those, if there is a benefit to be shared, understanding that there'll also be fuel savings and we're bearing the cost of the fuel. So we're already going to be seeing some of the benefit, but if there's other benefits as well. That's just a comment. So one little administrative thing, there's not two of me in this meeting. I think that's President Rivera, who is, I sent her a link that was sent to me to be in the meeting. And so that's her. And I don't think she's muted right now, but I did notice that. I'm not here twice. I'm not here twice. That's President Rivera. So I think right now, probably the best thing to do, especially, geez, look at the time, is to have the motion. And I move that we send to the full board the recommendation to approve the transportation contract as presented.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
President Rivera?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so that motion carries. We still have some action items to take a look at, so we should jump back to, we stopped at the contracts. I was informed before the meeting that contract D1, 2, and 3 are in need of being withdrawn, that those were in error. And so understanding that that's the case, then we would move to number 4, contract number 4, which is an award of a contract with Irwin's Seating Company for the replacement of those bleachers that cost us so much money at Floyd Little Athletic Center. So, Mr. Pinelli?
Yeah, so this is for the replacement of the bleachers at FLAC or Floyd Little Athletic Center. The current bleachers, as we know, are at end of life. There's been many safety issues throughout the year that we have been putting countless dollars into. As well as, we do pay for every time we have to set up and dismantle the bleachers. Roughly, we'll spend about $50,000 a year doing that. So over the course, over the past 20 years, we've spent probably close to $1 million just to have a company come in to set these bleachers up. The new style bleacher is actually remote. It works on an airlift system. It takes 2 men to operate, which we could do in-house. The reason we're going with the airlift system is because of the type of surface that is currently in the field house, plus the type of surface that we were applying for in the grant. The airlift system allows the bleachers to actually float over the structure, over the surface, so we don't cause any tears or damage to the surface. We are doing this with, excuse me, Irwin. The representative from Irwin, Greg Corbin, is actually on with us tonight. He's going to explain this probably a lot more in detail than I can. So go ahead, Greg.
Yes, thank you all for having me. I appreciate it. As Frank mentioned, we've been working with him for a couple of years now on this design. My name is Greg Corbin. I'm with Corbin Seating Company. We are the field partner for Irwin Seating Company, which is an Illinois company that does telescoping stands in arenas, in arenas and stadiums throughout the world. Irwin is a private company. Again, we rep them for New England, and a little bit of a difference with Irwin is that they, again, perform mostly private work in these arenas and stadiums. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little bit here. A little bit of history. Again, as Frank mentioned, your facility has the challenge of synthetic flooring with very large portable seating assemblies. The challenge there, actually another issue, is that you have 15-row portables. Your facility really operates more like an arena than it does a high school field house with regards to the telescopic stands. Because of that, the seating that you're dealing with now, it was original to the building, I think back in, what was that, 2002. I think it's been a struggle for the staff just because it, in retrospect, probably wasn't designed properly. It was a big ask to have those large portables without an upgraded airlift system operate over the synthetic floor. So again, Frank approached us about 1.5 years, almost 2 years ago now, and said, what can Irwin do? What can you do to make this an easier process for us? And Irwin uses an airlift system, one of their options for portables. It operates with a caster system so that instead of using fork trucks and so forth to lift the units up, it's a series of compressors that lift it, with an air system, lifts it up onto large tri-casters with a multiple dolly system that distributes the load on that synthetic floor, so it just makes it easier to operate. I'm not going to say it's easy per se, but it's a lot easier than what you have now. Irwin did a custom design for this project, specifically based on the 15-tier seating units that you have, and they designed just an upgraded understructure system that splits the load and brings the maximum PSI to the whole system to 400, which is just a great accomplishment for a system of this size. You have 13 portable seating systems that are they are 15 tier high, and they're 17 and 19 feet in length. So they're large systems. They're tough to move. But we've come up with, again, this system that will reduce the load on the floor and make it easier for the crew to operate these. We recently proposed this to Frank, in addition to replacing your permanent telescopic seating systems. And that was sent in last week. So exciting project for us. We've been working on it a long time with Frank, and Frank just asked me to talk to you people about our company and what we can offer. So that's where we are.
All right, thank you, and thank you, sir. Are there comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this forward and also for just talking about how things work and the company and the product. Clarifying question. So I think in terms of being able to move the equipment, I think what was said is that maybe 2 people can move these units and in-house staff will be
So
able to do this?
Frank had mentioned that, and I'm glad you bring that up, Dr. Yarborough. It's probably going to take a little more than 2 people. I'm not sure exactly how they do it now, but these are large systems. They'll still need to be manipulated around the facility. It's not like that'll be an easy process per se. It will just be a lot easier than it is now. Again,
Our athletic director is here if necessary.
okay, sure. And again, I have not seen exactly how it's done now. I know the project well. We bid it back in 2002. But I would say two people's a little optimistic, but again, it's a lot easier than it is now for sure.
Okay.
So
And
Greg,
I think,
you thinking 2
Yeah.
or 3 or 4 then? Because so maybe I misunderstood.
So Frank, that kind of depends on whether you used like a small vehicle to drive this around or not. I mean, I think we talked about pulling these with some type of a tractor of some sort, with the guidance of a couple of people that maybe where the confusion may have lied there. It's going to take a few bodies or a piece of supplemental equipment to roll these around for sure. Just because of the sheer size of these. But again,
we don't necessarily have to hire certified people like
That's
before
correct.
to come and move this. Okay.
Exactly, Frank. And I think it might have been perhaps the 2 people with a tractor, or maybe it's 4 or 5 people, but it's not as intricate as it is now for sure. I know the major issue now you have is that there's no supplemental air system. You just have these small casters, a small amount of casters, and with that soft floor that you have, a synthetic floor of any kind is soft and difficult for these type of systems. That's really your challenge now, is just that the intercal systems were just not really designed for that properly.
Yeah. And on that comment, were you also saying to us that the base placement or the wheel layout will reduce how much weight or pressure is in one particular area with the new setup compared to the current bleachers? Like the weight distribution is spread out more?
Yes, that's correct, Dr. Yarborough, especially when it's being moved, when it's being transported.
Okay.
And that's the trouble that they're having, is that the contact with the ground on the dollies or whatever they're using, it's just too much weight to manipulate these properly.
Thank you. And just my last question is more of a budget question. I think this facility is a great facility, it's very popular. Do resources come in from this facility that contribute towards the maintenance of the Floyd Athletic Center? Like, is it a regional hub for athletic events? And does any of that money come back in to reimburse or help maintain?
Eric, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so the facility brings in revenue based on rentals. So if we do something that's a regional thing, like the league or the CIAC does an event, we charge them, and we charge a profit so that there's money coming in. There is a small surcharge for maintenance of the equipment in the building, but it's not money being put towards the actual structure of the building and that sort of thing.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. It'll be good not to have a supplemental vendor to roll these things out at. I can't remember what the cost is per move, but it adds
It's
up.
about $2,000 every time we have an event.
About a $2,000, yeah. So that's good, and this does sound like it's a better system, and there is pictures of various types of systems in other schools that are attached in the document link connected to this. So I'll just note that. And are there any other comments or questions on this item? Hearing and seeing none, thank you very much for jumping in on the presentation, Mr. Corbin and Eric Pachowski and so on. So now we'll go ahead and move on to the purchase orders. The first one is purchase order number 1, which is under the contract with Lexia Learning System. Is Ms. Derwin, somebody available? There you are.
So, for the record, this isn't a purchase order, it is an agreement. So I think it was, listed incorrectly. This is an agreement with Lexia Learning for Letters for Early Childhood Educators, which is a curriculum for adult learners. It comes with 4 modules of language and literacy learning. It is in alignment, which is what is currently being used in the district for district administrators and will be used by the reading department for K-3. This is geared specifically for early childhood, centering around oral language development, phonological awareness, concepts about print and print awareness. And this is an example of leveraging Head Start funds. These professional development sessions will be for all early childhood educators in the district, not just Head Start staff.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, Ms. Derwin, I just appreciate what you just mentioned in closing. The 2 things, one about leveraging the Head Start dollars, and then also about a benefit that can serve the larger district Head Start educators, in addition to those who specifically work for our school. So I appreciate the thoughtfulness on that and the opportunity for kind of the whole unit to be strengthened through this training. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And on the question of this is a purchase order or an agreement, is that is there
At the time that we were putting the agenda together, we did not have the complete agreement, and I think Selena thought that it fell under the purchase order category. So we can make that move.
okay? So when I make the motion, it'll be that these 2 purchase orders, not the 3, and we'll add an additional agreement, and that'll just note the change there, and then you all can move it as needed after.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Sounds good. We'll go ahead and move on to purchase order number 2, which is under the PEPPM contract with CDW. Mr. Lamb?
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilcox. So this is one of the agreements that are one of the purchase orders that Gilda and Ed had been working on. Since I've assumed some of their responsibilities for taking these items to finance and operations, I'm still learning some of what they were doing. But certainly this is the CDW government contract to provide for the Google Education support. And this is in the amount not to exceed $112,500 under capital projects. I don't know why the contract term is as it is, but this is what was in place previous. And my understanding is it needs to stay this way. So that's something that I'll need to have conversation with Christine and Linda on. But certainly this is a needed item for the district related to Google for Education.
All right. And just on that, as I recall from previous times, things like this are mentioned, that we're buying a 1-year license and it's the actual year and not not on our fiscal year. The only other thing we could do is maybe negotiate a small prorated one to get it on our fiscal year, but this isn't the first of these computer systems related things that are the 1 year and not on the fiscal year. Any comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to purchase order number 3 with his under state contract for O'Brien and Sons for playground surface equipment installation. Mr. Finelli.
Share my screen quick. So this is for playground at Nathan Hale. Currently, Nathan Hale has no playground that services the upper students. This design is for 3rd through 8th graders. It's ESSER funded, and we are working rather rapidly. We're looking to complete this by the start of the new school year. Just show some pictures for fun. Current setup. I'm sorry, this will be the new setup with the rubberized surface.
Just a quick question. What's the material of the pyramid structure? Is that metal?
It's metal and rope.
Okay.
We have some similar to this at other schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's fun. Any comments or questions? All right. Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes. Is this setup adult rated for weight?
Well, technically, I guess you could say an 8th grader kind of is adult rated. So yeah.
Okay. There might be some testing when it's
exactly.
finished. Thank you.
I think we'll know where to find Dr. Yarbrough testing the equipment.
Yes.
Well, it does look fun. All right, seeing nothing else on that, we'll move into the change orders. And the first one is on-call drywall painting services. Mr. Finelli.
So currently we have an on-call with New Haven Painters. We've been able to paint and upgrade a lot of schools this year. I think we did 6 or 7 major upgrades in various schools that haven't been painted in what I'm hearing is 15 plus years. So this change order will allow us to finally do the upgrade and overlay of Fairhaven. Fairhaven's had some significant water damage throughout the years, and because of the moldings and the uniqueness of that room, we need to really invest in high-end painters. So with this change order, they will be doing the molding over, like I said, all that detailing, as well as taking down the soundproofing barriers that are hanging from the ceiling rather unsafely. And then a portion of this will go to East Rock to repaint their hallways as well.
All right, comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, just a question. I support this. Is there a certain percentage cap on change orders or no? Is it like 40%?
I don't, Tom?
Typically, I don't like to see change orders go more than 20%. With this, there is a
reallocation of account. I should have mentioned that too. There was an old painting account that had 43,000 into it. It was an old capital account. So just to, I guess, make it easier, we did move money out of that funding account into capital, as well as I think the 20%, which might meet the threshold. I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
The goal with this was to move forward with Fairhaven as quickly as possible. The work there has been it's an unsafe environment, and we want to make sure that we're able to take care of it as effectively as possible.
Okay. Thank you. And it's a practice rather than a
no. There is an actual policy on this, and I apologize for not noticing this sooner, but certainly we need to be more aware of that 20% mark and make sure that we're acting appropriately.
Thank you.
So I had a similar question, and I looked in our policy and I don't see that it's on our side. When you're referring to that, is that a city
Yes.
purchasing? Okay, so for this and for the next one, just to make sure, if we could just have confirmation this week that city purchasing will, that this works for them. So if we could just have that confirmation.
Absolutely.
I'm perfectly happy.
I'll coordinate with Melinda and get this taken care of right away.
Yeah, because it's a similar increase for the next one, and so but I did look, and our purchasing policy, procurement policy is silent on this question, but
with contracts, when we do change orders, it has to go to change order committee on the city side, and they really stress the 20% mark.
Okay, so I think just if my preference would be if they're not going to, if they think that's going to be a problem, maybe we can make adjustments for at the board meeting. I'm happy to support it moving forward now, but I request for this and for the next one, because they're both around the 40% mark, that we just get that confirmation from the city, and if there's not, then we can make an adjustment on the amount or something.
So we have taken items in the past above that 20% mark, and typically what they do is they just have me write a memo as to an explanation, just similar to what you request.
Yeah.
And then that goes to the change order committee, and we present our item, and if everything goes well, it gets approved. So with these items, I don't see an issue with procurement, but I'll certainly get approvals that are needed from Melinda to get this moving forward.
All right, if we could just have that confirmation, and I will note that they were the lowest bidder when this was sent out, when we approved this last, I think in June. So, I mean, they were the lowest one. So this is an increase on that. My only other comment or question on this, and I think it's for this and the next one, are these not to exceed?
Yes.
Okay, I don't think that's not noted here. So I think for this and for change order number, for the next change order, just to make clear that these are not to exceed. The new total is not to exceed. Right now it says it's a total amount for a hard number. So just so that we are consistent in how we note those.
Will do.
Thank you very much. We'll go on to the final thing, the change order number 3, which is with CT Controls. Mr. Elaine, or yeah, there you go.
Right. Good evening, everyone. We're actually going to go ahead and withdraw this request for change order after discussion and review of capital funding this week. We are going to reevaluate our ability to fund this request, and we'll come back to the board to the committee with another amount at a future date.
All right. I think, I think it was on my list earlier, and I apologize for
That's okay.
for forgetting
Thank
that.
you, Mr. Wilcox.
So, okay, so this item is withdrawn as well. Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, this is kind of unrelated, just technical. I'm looking at this PDF on my browser, and my Safari browser has the font double labeled, like a shadow, so it's unreadable. But in Chrome, it is readable, it's legible. But I noticed also in Chrome, it's still like a fillable PDF. So just for accessibility purposes, for other people who may be pulling it up, maybe there's a way where we can save these PDFs as flat files that can't be edited. I'm not sure what actually is needed, but I'm just noticing now it's 2 different browsers, it's 2 different things. So if anyone in the public opens it up, or another board member, they may not think to put it in a different browser and see. And I will send Mr. Mayo just the screenshots of what I see.
I just looked at it now too and seeing the same thing.
Yay! So it's not me. All right.
It's not just
Yeah.
you. It's, yeah, and it looks very strange in Safari versus, I use Firefox typically, but, okay.
Great. Thank you.
All right, so let's go ahead and, I'm gonna go ahead and make the motion, and that is I move that we send to the board with a recommendation to approve this one abstract, the now 11 agreements, the one contract, the 2 purchase orders, and the 1 change order.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
President Rivera?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so that carries. And
Mr.
looking,
Wilcox?
yes, sir.
Question. Do we also need to move the budget to the full board or no? The 2024, 2025?
I don't think so. I don't think we've done that in the past.
Okay.
I think we're here to ask the detailed questions and that'll just be brought to the board. I don't think we've done that way in the past. We certainly,
okay.
But
sounds good.
Okay. Thank you for the question. Looking at the time, I'm sorry, but there's a couple other items on here, including the important finding the gap staff guidelines, which I know people worked a lot on, and it connects to the budget. And my thought would be that this should also be given to the board along with the budget proposal. So understanding this is an update of a report that we had last year, perhaps it can be expedited and just highlight the new numbers. But I hate to not have it on here. So
good evening, everyone. I will do my best to expedite this report. Let me share my screen. And thank you, as always, for the opportunity to come before you. Let me see if I can show it a little bigger. There we go. And so this is an update to our previous staffing guidelines report. So this is the progress report. If you can recall, last year we examined 43 positions. We had a committee of central office administrators, school-based administrators, union leaders, teachers, paras, non-certified staff as well, all examining these positions and put a lot of time and effort into it. From the 43 positions examined, as of March 2023, this was our status. We knew based upon our research, based upon needs in the district, the total need for staff was 709, salaries approximately 39 million once factoring in benefits, almost another 16 million for a total cost of 55.1 million. And so here's our progress report. What we've been able to fill in fiscal year 24, I draw you to the third column. If you can recall, we added 5 special ed teachers, and we also added 5 bilingual classroom teachers as well. And so that was a total of 10 new positions, totaling approximately $750,000. Proposed in the budget that you saw this evening is an additional 17 positions. Those positions range from security to mental health support to multilingual coaches, and then 2 new positions that we did not examine, which are a cybersecurity position and a technology coordinator as well, which would total approximately $1.1 million. And so that is our progress report. Of course, those new positions that are proposed is contingent upon money received from the city and the state, and then whatever we choose and however we choose to mitigate positions. So that's what we're proposing, but of course, it's not etched in stone. And so that is our staffing guidelines progress report.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? Yes, Dr. Yarbrough.
Thank you. I love this report. Thank you for preparing it.
Thank you.
I also greatly appreciate and applaud the way that it came together and all the different contributions and collaborators that you named in order to talk about all the positions examined and then come up with the need for our district, recognizing that we are not a cookie cutter district and not necessarily able to take from our neighbors what their particular needs are, but looking specifically at us at home and coming up with the information here. Thank you very much for putting these numbers here, both the number of staff needed and then also the dollar amounts with that. I think maybe two questions, maybe a comment for where it says fiscal year 25 and the new staff. How did you come to the 17 for the recommendation for this fiscal year?
That would be a question for Dr. Negron.
Okay, I will hold it then.
Okay.
My related questions or comments. So maybe not this particular slide presentation, but it might also be interesting to see how our status changed from the last time this update was presented, or maybe the first time it was originated. So I think you have for FY24, you have the new staff here that we were able to hire this year. If we were to project out a few years, what would it be? So I'm thinking about people who are looking at our budget and need to make decisions about funding the district, for them to see over the period of 5 years, we can close the gap by investing X, Y, and Z, or this is what's going to be needed to really make a dent in this particular category, particularly as requests come forward for staffing. We can say, here's where we are, here's where we're looking to go. Because I think people need to know, maybe they already know, but I think some decision makers need to understand in real personnel numbers that the costs are not decreasing. The costs are increasing. And we're going to keep putting forward a higher, more expensive budget because things cost more and our needs change as the district is changing. So that's just me just saying it might be interesting to see a few years out what we're thinking about. And the other piece, and maybe a longer presentation, I would love to hear and know the narrative for the recommended positions in terms of what this would do. And these may be tied to particular schools or programs. They may not be. Maybe it's not appropriate to name where they might be, or maybe we don't know. But these are definitely individuals we're talking about who are going to serve our district. And it would be interesting to know like where we see them going. And my last thought is, conversation around maybe it's back to my first question about how the particular number of 17 was decided upon. I don't have a good strategy about showing you, oh, we need all of them filled today. But I appreciate the thoughtfulness that has gone into this. So this does not include staff that are paid for by the city or outside. So this doesn't include nurses. This doesn't include any other services that are provided, that are paid for outside of the district budget.
No, well, when we initially examined positions, we did look at nurses. And and we said, according to our guidelines, we needed a nurse at every school. However, the actual positions, when we looked at what was the need, it was just our budget. So it was just NHBS Board Ed.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Great. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
So I just have two brief comments. One is that since this is an update to the more full previous report, I would just include the link and an explanation in this document so that it can stand alone, to just say that this updates the report found at this URL, just so that people can go and look and see, you know, like the list of all the different people from the district and the unions that worked on this, et cetera, and has more of that context that that's helpful. And then a final thing, and I'm not asking for this to be done, I'm just thinking in ways of talking about this. This is district-based, and I do wonder what, based on those things, what this would look like in some of the schools. And I think this would be in the use of this, maybe in the budget presentations or other things, to be able to say, what this would mean is if we had the funding to actually fill the positions that were needed, is that, you know, Fairhaven School would have an extra 12 people in the building in doing roles like this based on these numbers, so that it's place-based and not just district-based. I don't know that it makes sense to do it across the board, but you do have the ratios and the math that's there of what the goals are per number of students or per building. So that just might be one of those things that helps really personalize it. I mentioned that because all the stuff I've done comparing Staples High School in Westport to Cross High School in New Haven, and how they're funding that they're able to have 50 more people in that building than we are able to have at Cross. And just starting to think about, boy, what would you do if 50 more FTEs of certified staff in that building is like, you just really, it really drives home the gap in a real way that gets hidden in the big numbers of the district wide. So that's all I had on that, but I do appreciate the update.
Thank you.
And it has been helpful. I know when I've talked to people like alders and other people, just be able to say, look, you know, and the presentations that you all did coming out of this at the Alder Education Committee meeting last year, highlighting special education needs and multilingual learner teacher needs to have enough people in the building. It also helps really drive home the point that this is what inequitable funding in Connecticut means. It means not having those people. So if hearing nothing else on this item, looking at this, I don't know if we have an update on the process for rescinding previously approved contracts. So, because I think the part of that was going to be from Attorney Alexiadis. So I think we'll have to move this to the next agenda. And I think just for the discussion on the Series 3000 policies, these two policies, I think we talked about them previously. I think it's time for us to tackle those next. So let's please take a look at these so that next meeting we can talk about potential changes to those policies as the next ones that this group tackles. And then on our discussion calendar, we would also be talking about the procurement policy. We need to make those updated changes. And I know I've had various conversations with Ms. DeMayo and others. So, but you know, those are the upcoming policy ones that we'll be tackling. And with that, I think we've reached the end of the agenda. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
And I second it. And we'll vote. Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes.
President Rivera?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.